Hello everybody, this is Maniac4Bricks, and I'm here today with another Collect-A-Thon video. This is where I show a collection of a particular type from a particular toy or video game franchise. So for this time around, we're taking a look at one of the short-lived Technic themes from LEGO called RoboRiders. And I do have a little bit of a backstory, but if you wanted to learn more information where I got this from, you can check the card at the top of the screen from the TTV channel, which offers a little bit more information about this, and also the link in the description below from Wikipedia, where I was able to learn about it as well. So, concept-wise, this took place before Bionicle was a idea, and was shortly after Slizers or Throwbots was known and became kind of popular. At the time, LEGO didn't consider Throwbots was going to be a success the way that it became. So, it was a little late for them to change back into continuing Throwbots, and instead released RoboRiders, which was a little bit choppy because the story wasn't really developed. There weren't a lot of sets to it, because this is the entire collection of RoboRiders sets. And I'm really lucky that I was able to get all these at the same time, even getting some of these smaller box sets, which were a little less common. So, what's the story with RoboRiders? Well, not a lot. You see, there was some sort of cyberspace, and these creatures dwelled in different realms, as you can see indicated by the elements on all these boxes. Now, in each realm, there was a virus released that started to take over, and there were certain creatures that developed machines called RoboRiders in order to combat them. Each RoboRider has a disc on them that can launch and use it and its elemental power to defeat the viruses. There was really no set particularly that described who released the virus into each of these realms. It's been speculated that the boss set, shown over here, was that leader, or at least led the RoboRiders that you see up front. It's really not a lot of detail and not a lot of information about that set in general. That really helps with this theme kind of coming together and being a cohesive story. Now, what's interesting story-wise about these 4 boxes, they almost have no part, or very little part at that. I mean, there's really not a lot of substance to the story itself, but they're really not mentioned as being anything particularly special. They could just be like small things, or maybe smaller vehicles that dwell in each of these, but they don't carry the same play features as the other sets. And actually that works out a little bit better in their favor because it makes it more unique, but we'll talk more about those as we open these containers up and take a closer look at all the RoboRiders. But yes, this is honestly all of them together, and most of these canister-based sets were about $6 or $7 in the United States for when they were released from 1999 to 2000. The boss set, I think, was closer to $20. I thought there was a price tag on here somewhere, but I don't have it currently available. You can check in the description below as far as how that's priced, as well as the rest of these. I know these were much smaller, like $3 or $4 kind of price point sets, because they are, of course, smaller builds. But, yeah, there's really not much as far as the story and this wasn't really a successful theme for LEGO before Bionicle came out and just took over after that. This one didn't really have a lot to it as far as structure. It didn't really have a lot as far as the story goes to make it more intriguing for each of these. And since RoboRiders, kind of replaced a really successful line, it was kind of disappointing because it just gave Throwbots a halt in what could have been something really cool. So, we'll open all these up and take a closer look at each of these. Now, a lot of the RoboRiders, I'm just going to mention right off the bat, are practically the same in terms of the pieces that are used, but they do have a little bit of difference in play features. To start things off, we'll take a look at the smaller sets from this line. These were not only available in boxes, but also in polybags as promotionals with Kayabua Sweets, which is a Japanese product at the time, which LEGO had a lot of different promotions and different LEGO themes for them. So, these are actually pretty interesting because they all have different play features to them. Some a little bit more basic than others, but they have nothing that actually captures the play features from the main line of RoboRiders sets. And in some cases that's good, in some cases it's really not that interesting, because a lot of smaller Technic sets at the time pretty much did the same things. For the one on the right, or one on the left, we have basically a suspension feature, which even on each of these legs, or wheels in the back, can move independently, so you could have different structures to ride over. But it is nice to have it with the rubber bands in place. The second one we have here is a little bit more of a motorcycle type of build, and it has this gear in the back where you can actually angle the back wheel, and actually angle it by quite a lot. You can move it all the way to here if you wanted to, and it'll still roll. Not really sure how that would work or why that would work, but that is something you can do. Give it a little bit more, edge to it, if you may, but still an interesting design. The third one we have is the only one that's actually, well, I guess it's the only second one that's aerial, because the boss is also able to fly, but this one does not require any wheels whatsoever, and you just simply spin this gear on the side to make the propeller move. I actually do like the look of this one, especially with these little pieces on the front. Just a nice shape to it. And then the last one, a little bit strange, but I'll give it some credit. For the time that it was made at least. This one has mostly the specialness to it is that these wheels are angled. There's really nothing else that's special about it. It doesn't have any gear functions, no suspension. I mean, I think this is supposed to be suspension in the back, but it's so low to the ground, it's kind of hard to tell. I mean, this is probably like the weakest out of the four of these, and even then, the rest of them are okay at best. But I still appreciate that each of them have their own unique builds to them. They have the same faceplates as some of the mainline sets, including Lava, Power, Frost, and Swamp, which we will see those in just a moment, along with Dust and, I can't remember what the other one's name is, Onyx. So we'll take a look at those next. So here we have the 6 RoboRider canister vehicles. Now, before we get to the actual vehicles themselves, I'd like to address one of the things that kind of makes the theme, and that's all of these different wheels. The ones on the left, these left 3, have 2 wheels to make each of their models, and that's why they're a little harder to stand up. They're supposed to have kickstands with them, at least these 2, but not really sure about this one, and they don't quite stand up that well, and, But the ones on the right side, these 3, all have 3 wheels to them, all of which you can interchange for which ones you use for the main play feature of their sets. Before we get to those, I just wanted to show these a little more up close. These each have their own, special molding onto them, and even some special printing, so that you can illustrate some sort of characters that are riding each of these vehicles. They're supposed to, be the ones that create the vehicles and kind of use them against the virus in each of their respective realms. They are in different colors and styles. There are 16 of them to collect from what I've understood, and there are some that are in gold. I don't know if that's a pearl gold or a metallic gold. You can find out more information about that through Brickerpedia and Bricklink.com. Now, one thing that's pretty interesting is that the 4 vehicles we mentioned earlier, this one does have the same style of wheels, but it doesn't have an actual, sort of molding or character on it. This is just a generic type of that wheel. So, I find that interesting. I don't know if there's a story explanation for it. I don't even know if those 4 are supposed to be canon or whatever. But I just wanted to at least bring that up for, an interesting point. So, the ones on the left side will start from their Power, Onyx, Frost, Lava, Swamp, and Dust. Starting with the left side, Power, this one and several others actually have a similar feature for the back. I mean, they'll all have the same feature for the front, but we'll talk about that once we get through them. As far as the back goes, this one has a knob that you can turn and, kind of adjust the back wheel so you can still make it move. In some cases, the front wheel may not spin if you go too high with it. So if I just lower this a bit, now we can get it rolling. This one also has the most articulation because you can actually move these arms in different ways, much like the Throwbots before and the Bionicle figures afterward. This one also has a point of suspension with the back wheel. This whole piece in the middle kind of helps with making a point of suspension, and several other ones also share that. So that's actually pretty cool that they include that for some of these figures or vehicles. I don't really know if these themselves would be their own characters. This one has a similar style, but instead for the knob, it's actually a larger piece towards the back. And this, again, has a point of suspension, so you can move that around. And these arms are fixed in place, so less articulation on that point. I actually find this one and Dust pretty interesting because they use a different style of heads compared to other RoboRiders, and instead use the ones that are at least the same shaping as Throwbots. In fact, I believe the boss also has that same shaping as well. Yes, he does. We'll talk about him a little bit later. Frost, really nothing to speak of. I mean, this one does have the Throwbot's torso, and therefore has the same point for, changing the gear, and again, adjusting how the back wheel is done. So you get a little bit of shaping for that. And I do like the tubes that are on there, but there's really nothing else as far as the arms or anything like that to use. And these are supposed to have kickstands, you can see there, but they don't really work. Lava is pretty interesting. These three kind of have more of a push feature for each of their secondary action after this one. And this one, I've always found it to be a little bit harder to actually operate. You see, if you just hold it here, it kind of can push us forward, and then you get, as you can see there, the wheels move back, and the axes move forward, and they just barely get in front of the wheel on this side. Kind of just trying to illustrate a different, maybe, mode to it, or just have it as a weapon per se, but it's not always an easy thing to move on its own. Like if you have it like this, you pretty much get it fixed. If you have it like this, you pretty much have it fixed. So there's that, but it does have black axes, so that's cool. Swamp has that play feature, but done in a little bit of a different style. You see, this one actually combines a little bit of suspension and pushing the arms forward. With this one, you bring it back to make the suspension, but also to move these swords forward, as you can see right there. So if you push this forward, it's pretty much the same position. But if you push it backward, that's how you get this action to move. I actually find these pieces to be interesting to be used here, and just watch how the swords move themselves. They pull in, and then they push back out, which is, I think, a cool looking play feature. Just nice ingenuity for something that's small. And Dust is probably the one that does it best as far as the pushing feature, just to make it very straightforward. You just push towards the head area, and these will pop out, these little harpoon-like pieces. Now, if you do push it too far down, you may actually get it to be really low riding. I think you can move up a little bit more, so you can just, get a little bit of elevation with it. But that's pretty much it as far as that goes. Now, while we're here, let's talk about that play feature that combines all of them, and that is how these discs are moved. You see, you can move this tray in the front. They all have the same pieces to make that tray pop forward. And you could use that to either change out the wheels or use the play feature for this. I've always found the play feature to be a little difficult to use. So, there's supposed to be something. Let me see if I can check in the instructions real quick, because it's kind of explaining the instructions on how that works, but I've never really found it to be like 100%, use it right away and it works. It has something to do with you fold these sides. You really have to pull this thing forward, but not pull it all the way out. You fold these sides downward so that it releases the wheel. You could use that. And then this works as a flexible piece to launch, to, hold up. And then there we go. Okay, it finally worked. I'm glad, because I've had a couple times before it didn't quite work out so well, and it really has to, fold these pieces outward in order for that to work. So that's the main play feature, the projectile of some of these front wheels. Now, granted, you would have to chase after them before you start riding with the RoboRider again, but still interesting to implement that. So, out of these, I probably like, if not for the way the kickstand works on power, I'd say I like it the best because of the way that it's formed, and I do like the suspension with it. But I think I like Swamp the best because it does combine a little bit of the suspension aspect and the pushing aspect, so a little bit of both worlds. Now, let's take a look at the combo models. At least in the back of the instructions for each of these, you will find a whole bunch of different combinations for putting these RoboRiders together. In a bunch of these, you actually use the canister lids attached into the build. They each have points for fitting an axle through them or a pin through them. So they look a little bit messy to me. I don't think I'm really going to show them on video rebuilt like that. If you want to know more about that, let me know in the comments below and I will do a separate video for it. But this one probably looks the best for me because it actually has some consistency to it. I like the way these projectiles are on the sides. It just looks pretty proper and probably stands pretty well too, considering the two in the back, one in the front. Now we'll take a look at the last RoboRider, the Boss. So here we have the last of the RoboRiders, the Boss. Now, I've tried to look for the price for this one since I wasn't entirely sure in the beginning of the video, but apparently even the leading LEGO fan websites like Brickset, Brickopedia, and Bricklink don't really have a retail price for this one. Now, value-wise, it's somewhere between $10 used and $50 new, but that's only for aftermarket sales, and for this point, obviously, that would be how you would find it. So, as far as the pieces go, there's only somewhere on this box, it should say it. Oh, there it is, 125 pieces. So, I don't imagine this being anything more than $20 to $30 when it first came out. So, if there is more information like that, let me know in the comments, or I will fill that in somewhere in the description below. But you may notice when looking at this vehicle, one thing particularly missing, something that all the other RoboRiders had for mainline sets, but this one doesn't. And that's the play feature that we talked about in the last part of the video. That is right here, and in a nice orange color at that. It still has some of these wheels being used, and two of them are actually included on the vehicle on the front and on the back, and one of them is actually the same as the one we just showed right there. But what's interesting is this vehicle has two forms, maybe even 5 forms if you really think about it, because this particular model is able to split from this large assembly into, if I just slide this back out, into a jet and into some sort of bike. Now the bike itself, whether or not you have the jet on there, actually has a bit of that articulation as we talked about earlier, where you can move the back wheel and kind of angle this in different ways, but still have a bit of suspension to it. I think that's actually pretty cool for that time period to have that as a function, to do both. Now, as far as the jet, it does have its own play feature as well. Each of these wings, if you turn, what I think these are supposed to be some sort of projectiles on their own, I'm not really sure, but each of these you can turn to extend the wings outward or move them inward. So you can get a little bit of difference in there. And it does use the same piece here for that as far as suspension goes, but this one doesn't actually move that far for suspension, so I'm not really going to mention it for that particular function. Now, this model can actually be rebuilt into another one, which I was tentative on actually rebuilding it for the purpose of this video, but I don't actually know if story-wise it's actually worthwhile. You see, there really isn't much of the story to explain if this is supposed to change in both forms or just be this one. Most times, when you'll see this being advertised on different websites, and usually the artwork you would see in catalogs and such, it would be in this shape. And the other one that they show rather on the back of the box, so I would think, yes, that is supposed to be how it's supposed to be. The back of the box shows that there is another form where it has a whole bunch of different large wheels used, like the main one. You still have that feature that we talked about for some of the other sets, but this one is actually able to split from this one in the wheel back and 2 in the wheels in the front to a whole bunch of smaller bikes. There are 2 bikes that are almost identical but symmetrical that split off from the main part. So this is where you would actually use that play feature that other RoboRider sets have. And there is an additional wheel that's included with the set and yeah, just basically reworking some of the pieces. This is also the only RoboRider set to use stickers as part of its construction. Now, the stickers are actually used a little bit under these wings. Let me see if I can just move this one particularly out so you can see it right there. And similar identical one is on the other side as well. There is another one or two that are used, I believe, on these wing-like pieces. And if we take this back off in here again, on these pieces as well. It adds a little bit more detail. I do like it. I don't think it's really interfering with anything. It is shaped to the pieces, so it works out very nicely. And I kind of like this as it is. I'd still like to try the other one out, but I'll probably talk more about that on a separate video if you would like to see that. Let me know in the comments below if you want to learn more about that. But as it is, this really doesn't have a lot of story context as far as the vehicle itself. It doesn't really explain if it's a good guy or a bad guy. And considering that we didn't get any bad guy sets from this line, and instead, really all the virus stuff that I was talking about, that's only shown in pictures on each of these boxes. I'll bring up the box again for the boss particularly, and you'll see what I mean. This is your virus. This is it. These little things on the side for this particular area of dust is your virus. That, you know, really only shows in the artwork how these RoboRiders are fighting against the main villain. So, is it possible that this could be an actual set villain? I'd say so, because especially considering these aren't even used for this main model. They are used on the sides, but you could probably use that as saying, oh, maybe it captured them. But I guess I'll talk more about that on a separate video as well. Maybe Brick Theory, we'll have to see later on. So, that's pretty much it as far as this vehicle. So thank you all for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you learned a little something about this lesser known LEGO theme. Let me know in the comments below what you found interesting from this video. It doesn't have to be something you liked, something maybe you disliked. It could go either way, but something that you got out of this video that you didn't really expect or learn before. We'll see you next time with more LEGO videos and more Collect-A-Thons, and I'm actually impressed that this was all of them. I thought I was actually missing a few, but I guess I was thinking of Throwbots. We will talk more about them at a later time once I get a bunch of them together. I do have a bunch of them, but I just need to put them all into one space and organize that for the video. So, we'll see you next time with more videos. If you want to check out more on my channel, there's plenty of other LEGO Technic and Bionicle, and some Throwbots will be coming soon, like I said. You can subscribe so that you can check out those videos when they appear, and hit the bell so that you can be notified, because YouTube doesn't quite work all the time as far as letting you know when the videos are new and when they are out. So, again, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time, and if you want to see some of those combination models, for example, the ones combining each of these, or the alternate model for this, let me know as well in the comments below, and I will do a separate video about those. We'll see you next time with more LEGO videos.